Hello, Canonites, and welcome to the 2020s. So Canon has finally made some news about their RF mount and what that means for the future. Unfortunately, they are still only making these lenses available for the APS-C stuff. So it's 2024 and Canon still isn't allowing third parties like Sigma, Tamron, companies like that to make any lenses for their system. But today we are checking out the Voigtlander 75mm f1.5 for the RF mount. Now, this does have contacts on it, but it is not an autofocus lens. Canon obviously isn't helping us out by making any autofocus lenses outside of their own RF lenses to be available. But if you are in the Canon system and want to add a little bit more of a vintage characteristic to some of your images, as well as a bit more of an involved experience, this definitely might be something you will want to take a look at. So a thanks to CameraQuest for sending this over. I don't get to keep it. I don't even own any Canon RF mount cameras. I will definitely be sending it back, but I am interested in the fact that Voigtlander is going out of their way to make RF lenses that will work obviously on the RF system, despite the fact that, again, there is no autofocus available. 75mm is a bit of an odd focal length. Most people are going to be jumping from a 50mm to an 85mm, and 1.5 isn't like incredibly fast or anything like that. So you can definitely go out and get the older Canon 85 1.2 or the 1.4 from them, or the new RF 1.2. But that being said, having something a lot more small and compact, and if you are someone that is just kind of bored with the modern digital process, this is where something like this, I think, is really an interesting concept, especially if you are kind of locked into that Canon system. Now, this is obviously styled like a vintage lens, but obviously is going to be a native mount to the RF mount. I don't have an RF camera in with me. I had to borrow one for just taking the sample images for this video, but it just feels like a really, really well-made lens. I use Voigtlander lenses on my Leica M system, and it just has a really nice tactile feel to it. And the images out of it are a really nice in-between between like a vintage feel where you get kind of a little bit of a swirly bokeh, a little bit of softness around the edges, but still a really modern rendering in that it still can get really, really sharp, especially in the center. This thing also doesn't weigh a ton. And so especially for video work, or if you just are looking for something that is going to give your images a little bit of a different kind of pop to it, it is a really, really fun lens to use. A thing to note as well is they do have a Leica M mount version of this lens that I've used and reviewed on the channel. You can check it out up here. But if you are on the Canon RF system, I have found that those lenses don't perform well on Canon bodies. So if you're thinking about buying maybe a Leica M adapter and then putting it onto your Canon camera, the 75 will probably do a decent job of that. But you find a lot more of the kind of weird smearing and issues going on the Canon system that I don't find necessarily very helpful, or it just doesn't perform that well. So if I was on the Canon system, I definitely would check this out because it's native to that system. It's going to be mounting there. I'm assuming the lens will project a little bit better onto that sensor. And so while, yes, you can pick up this lens in a Leica M mount that might be a little bit more versatile, the odd thing is that on a Canon RF mount, it doesn't work very well typically. So honestly, there's not much to this lens. I mean, it has a really nice focus throw. It has a really nice subtly clicked aperture here. Everything about it just works really, really well. I think that 75 is a cool focal length as well. It's not as compressed as an 85. Obviously, it's going to be longer than a 50. And at 1.5, you're getting plenty of out of focus elements and background separation. I find the out of focus elements to be really pleasing. It definitely gives you a little bit, again, of that cat's eye bokeh, a little bit of that swirling effect without going over the top. So it's something that can give you a little bit of a vintage characteristic and a little bit of a vintage feel without going overboard and having everything be hazy or feeling just soft and terrible. So if you're interested in this lens, I will definitely put a link to it down below. Thanks again to CameraQuest for sending this out. If you're interested in watching my first video on this, the Leica M version, it can be found up here. Check out some more videos that YouTube might think you would like up here, and I will see you in one of those videos.